The 2024 summer season is upon us and approaching fast, and I don't know about you, but I have a lot of plans this summer. But just like you, my plans can be drastically changed by the course of the weather. Now, what we need to do in today's video is figure out what you can expect to see overall throughout the course of your summer. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can we see the weather for 3 months out? We can't even trust the weather 2 weeks out, let alone 3 months out. Well, what we're going to be doing in today's video is called long-range forecasting, and this gives us a rough estimate of the overall type of weather that we may be able to see throughout the course of our summer season, wherever you live. So without further ado, let's get right into today's video. Now, when we think of summer, we probably think of heat, okay? Summer is hot, unless you live in Greenland, but we need to look at the temperature factor, okay? What are our temperatures going to be for the summer wherever you live? So what we're going to go into first is called our temperature anomaly forecast map. And here, this is a map I put together for y'all to understand the type of weather conditions based off of temperature so far. So whether you're going to have above average temperatures, meaning hotter temperatures, or below average temperatures, meaning cooler temperatures. So let's go ahead and get into the map. All right, now the first region I have for y'all is this slightly cooler region indicated by the blue in the western United States. This includes portions of California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and Arizona, and Nevada. So in case you haven't already been able to tell, this means cooler conditions, so slightly below average temperatures. Now, this doesn't mean it's going to be frostbitten, wasteland, winter wonderland. That's not what this is saying. But what this means is you're going to be experiencing some slightly cooler conditions, maybe 1 to 2 degrees below average. That's kind of what we are expecting as of now. So nothing too noticeable. Like if you walk outside, you're not going to be like, wow, this is really cold. But, you know, maybe a little bit of a damper on your weather. So if you like some cooler conditions, and it's pretty hot outside in the west, so this may be a benefit to a lot of y'all. But usually with that troughing that we are expecting in the western portions of the United States, we're kind of expecting those cooler conditions to affect much of the western United States most of the time this summer as we transition from El Nino to La Nina. All right, now on the flip side, over here for much of the central and eastern United States, we are looking at this yellowish region indicated by slightly above average temperatures. Now, much like the slightly below average temperatures, this means only a slight change. So we're looking at a slight increase in temperatures, maybe 1 to 2 degrees above average consistently throughout your summer season. So again, you're not really going to walk outside and think, wow, this is really, really hot outside. You know, obviously summer's already hot. You're going to probably think it's pretty hot outside, but nothing more increased than what you usually expect. However, this slight change can affect the overall weather, and we may be seeing a little bit some more stormy conditions depending on how much moisture we get. And overall, some increased temperatures could make things a little more toasty at times throughout your summer season. Now moving on to our final region on this forecast map, we are looking at our warmer area. This is our above average temperatures region. This affects much of the Ohio Valley here, including even far into the mid-Atlantic and the portions of West Virginia and Pennsylvania. So we do see here, this is where you're going to start to notice those changes pretty consistently. You're probably going to walk outside and think, wow, this is a pretty toasty summer. Okay, and this doesn't mean every day, because obviously we have weather patterns. We have cold fronts and Arctic air masses that move through that may cool things down and bring some stormy conditions, but overall, you're likely going to see a pretty toasty increase in your summer weather, and it's going to be a pretty hot summer. So if you like toasty conditions, this is the summer for you. If you're already not a fan of the heat that's already come through the spring, then it's probably going to be a bit more of an uncomfortable summer throughout this season, but keep those AC and fans running and you'll be just fine. All right, now the next factor we got to look into is our precipitation anomaly forecast map. Now, similar to the temperature anomaly forecast map, we're going to be looking at the change, but this time for precipitation or rainfall. So whether you're going to be seeing above average rainfall, below average rainfall, or a slight increase or decrease in between. So let's take a look at the map. All right, so starting off in our first region, we're taking a look at that slightly less wet region there. So that's indicated by that brownish color. And what we're expecting here is, again, slightly decreased precipitation. So overall, these areas typically don't see a lot of precipitation during the summer. On average, it's pretty dry during the summer. Now, these areas recently have been getting a lot more precipitation due to that active subtropical jet stream with that El Nino. However, now that we're making a transition back to La Nina, we're going to see a decreased activity in that subtropical jet stream, and that is not only going to reduce the amount of precipitation that we've been seeing, but also that's likely going to take things back to some slightly decreased activity with precipitation. So overall, I do believe we're going to have a pretty dry summer for these areas. This region stretches from portions of southeastern California to southwestern Texas, and also includes portions of Florida and far southern Georgia. So anywhere within these two different regions can expect slightly decreased precipitation this summer. All right, now the final region we need to look at is this green region here. We have two separate areas of this green region. So the first one up here is for the Pacific Northwest near Seattle and Portland, Oregon. And over here for the eastern United States, we have much of the central United States, the Midwest, and even in portions of the Ohio Valley and some portions of the Mid-Atlantic. So all of these areas, we are expecting an increased precipitation pattern. So again, slightly increased. It's not like you're going to be seeing tons and tons of rainfall, but we will likely see a little bit of a more wet summer. First off, with the Pacific Northwest, we have that increased Pacific jet stream there. So we see that increased activity off of the Pacific coastline, and then we see a lot of that precipitation building up. And we also see over here for the eastern United States, we're going to see a bit of troughing. So basically, if you don't know what that means, that's kind of a dip in the jet stream, and we're going to see a bit more increased precipitation as a result, a lot more storminess, and that could lead to even some increased severe weather, which we're going to talk about on the next map. All right, now in our final forecast map for this video, we are going to be looking at our overall forecast map. Now, what this map does is it gives you an idea of the overall generalized weather pattern that you can expect to see for your summer season of 2024. So as you can see, we have various different colorful regions here, and we're going to go over each individual one of them to give you an idea of what you can expect to see for your summer season. All right, we're going to start up here in the Northwest over for this green region here. This is called increasingly active jet. So again, when we talk about that jet stream, which I mentioned earlier for a precipitation pattern, we are expecting increased jet stream activity over this area. Now, what that does is it carries a lot of our storm systems, a lot of those storm systems that bring you rain and even colder weather at times, and that's what's going to be moving through the area here. We do see an increased pattern with that with La Niña. So as we transition to La Niña, a lot of these areas indicated in that light green region under the increasingly active jet, that is likely going to be in your future. You may see a lot of wet conditions over the summer, maybe some stormier conditions, and overall some increasingly active precipitation patterns. Now, moving all the way to the southwest, we see areas from California all the way to Texas. This is the hot and arid. Now, this may not be a surprise to you. You may be thinking, yeah, duh, that's kind of what's in this area. But what we are expecting is that transition from, again, that active precipitation pattern that we've been seeing throughout the course of this El Nino episode. A lot of people have gotten kind of used to that. Now we're moving back towards that typical hot and arid climate for this area. And especially this summer, that may be kind of a surprise because we are really jumping in that La Nina pattern, decreasing that subtropical jet stream activity, and likely bringing back those hot and dry conditions that are typical for this area. Now, just north of that, in between these two different regions, we see the back and forth region here indicated by that lime yellow color. And this area is likely going to be back and forth between these two regions. So depending on how close you are to either region, to the north or the south, you're likely going to get a mix of these two different conditions, whether it's hot and arid or increasingly active jet bringing some precipitation patterns. So it really all depends on where you are within this region, but I do believe this is going to kind of be a flip-flop region, kind of back and forth between the two of these, and it's going to get a little wacky at times. But overall, you can kind of expect a mix of both of these different regions. Now, for our dark green region here for the north central United States, we do see that wet pattern, and this area a little bit different from the increasingly active jet. Here, I do believe this is going to be more stormy. Similar to that severe weather region down below, but we are expecting some stormier conditions for this area. Overall, just increasingly active wet patterns for this area. With that transition back to La Nina, we are expecting that jet stream to get pretty active again, and a lot of these areas will likely see a bit more precipitation than what we have seen so far, potentially even heading in to that slightly above average precipitation region that we talked about earlier. On our precipitation anomaly forecast map, we will likely see a bit of increased precipitation for this area. Now, moving on to that giant red region there, we're looking at the severe weather region that includes much of the central United States and portions of the Ohio Valley. Now, there is a little bit of confusion with this region that often comes up in my videos, and people have a little bit of trouble differentiating between the two, so we're going to go over this pretty easily. So if you live within the severe weather region, that doesn't mean your whole summer is going to be characterized by severe weather events. That doesn't mean you're going to get tons of tornadoes, hail, damaging winds, and if you live outside of this region, that doesn't mean you're not going to see any severe weather at all. This is just the region I do expect the most severe weather to happen. So again, you'll still have sunny days, you'll still have beautiful bright days, but I do believe some more active severe weather patterns could be present across this region here. And if you live outside of this region, you still could see severe weather events, even some frequent ones at that. But I do believe that this region this summer is likely going to be our most active severe weather pattern region. due to the dynamics setting up with that transition back to La Nina. All right, now just below that to the east and south, we do see this stormy region. So similar to the severe weather region, this region is a downtone of the severe weather. So we don't really expect as much severe weather events to happen within this region, but I do believe an active stormy pattern. We're going to see a lot of thunderstorm activity, a lot of heat, a lot of moisture. We're going to see a lot of storminess, maybe even some severe weather events at times, but a little bit of a downplay from the severe weather region that is to its west. And moving on to our final region, this is the Watch the Tropics region. Now, you may be thinking, okay, in every summer forecast video, I always see this region. This is pretty stereotypical, okay? What's different about this time? Well, this is an area where we do actually have to watch even more this season than other seasons. Obviously, every tropical season we have to watch the tropics, but this year we have to be a little more on high alert because as we transition back to La Nina favors less wind shear across portions of those hurricane development regions, or known as the main development region, MDR, and that is likely going to lead to increased tropical activity. Not only with that, but we also see warmer sea surface temperatures across that MDR, and that is also going to lead to the potential for increased hurricane development. And obviously this region is kind of in the path of that, so we really have to be careful and watching the tropics this season as this progresses towards our 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. All right, I want to thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy this forecast, I would ask you consider subscribing to my channel for more US forecasts free of charge, and consider following the Weather at a Glance official Facebook page for more inside information and complimentary personal forecasts when you message me on my Facebook page. A big thanks to our channel members, Chris, Betty. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. You help make this possible. And with that, I will see you in the next video.